What is time? That's what we're going to find out in this video. All about time. Thank you.
What is time? Asking the question, what is time, is one of the most unknown questions that in a sense has no absolute answer. But what is time? Time was earlier answered by an early 20th century now famous gentleman Albert Einstein. He answered the question about time as being a spacetime multidimensional space in which one space does not exist without the other time. He actually developed a formula which illustrates this phenomenon about time. It is shown in this book in the later chapter. But what did he mean when he spoke about spacetime? That space and time were in reality the same thing, and one cannot exist without the other. To Einstein, he developed spacetime as a coordinates that connects the past and future together, achievable in the presence of time he calls the here and now. But what connection exists between the space grid and time might be the real question. When we look at space, we observe it as the grid, the fabric of space that everything material and planetary resides on, or within a fabric that actually causes the planets and the galaxies to spin and rotate, and in a special predictable range and velocity. If we look at time and the space as a grid, we observe these qualities: a space grid and spin, both of which can be measured in units, distance, and time. If we look at time with these qualities, we discover that time is actually a coordinates of units each that can be measured in units of seconds and even minutes, and have a unitary parallel with distance that is also measured in units, but which measure parallel with time. What this says is that in each second of time on a clock second hand and specific amount of distance is measurable within the unit measurements of length or distance and the single second of time. What this means is using the correct formula in mathematics, time and distance act parallel relative with the velocity. To prove this, we can look at what is described as the beginning of everything, the Big Bang event. Was it that Big Bang event? Was there something before this event, or was this event more like a collapse? To answer this question, we can look at the causes. We look at space described as Dirac Sea, the firmaments above the waters that were under the waters. We observe the existence of some type of materiality existing within Dirac Sea and the phenomenon of its existence. As mobile, very hot and very cold, both acting parallel, forming energy content and having the ability to cope with a flexible fabric existence of the space around. It acting upon this very dense cosmic embryos or cosmic egg, causing it to fight and grow over and over again until the fabric flexibility became so enormous the grid fabric dense space set a limit to how much force could be built against it inside its spacious sea.
The cosmic egg was crushed and collapsed somewhat like a man's befriended girlfriend cries before she goes away. The eruption was so enormous that as it finally exploded and stretched space beyond its normal limit trying to put up a good fight, space was warped by it. A false vacuum erupted, contradicting an endless explosion in everything material, and the explosion acted out counterintuitively. The event slowed down and created an interaction of similar masses bubbles, which were very dense in the earliest days of the newly born universe, somewhat like liquid water and oceanic sea liquid will see, and into water drops. A hot starburst counterintuitive to a real cold empty space continuum. This broken debris of bits and pieces collapsed into liquid vaporized matter chunks that expanded into new little bangs of enormous explosions that later evolved into gigantic galactic-sized masses, pushed away into empty cold space and became frozen, forced off from the collapsed molding pit, were so dense they gave rise on the surface of the grid, then later evolved into modern time. Broken galaxies we see today, but due to the false vacuum event, inflation presided and closed the hot pit, and like everything electric, these masses, amongst other masses, the material planetary bodies, began and spin, slowly separating as the special body of space itself reformed into a greater, concentrated repulsion wake of oscillating waves which, generated by the presence of matter, were pushed up and away from. Space tells matter what to do, and matter curves. The eruption is not over. Warp space, which regenerated into a concentrated spacious bubble-like body form, continues to grow within the infinite space sea that has entrapped it. It is filling in the space where the earlier Big Bang event warped space, futilely weakening it and testing it of its flexible gravitation. As light in the distance merges closer together, the further it gets, distance is shadowed by darkness and darkness by invisibility. The quantum physics theory takes us beyond the early 20th century idea that it is the reflection of light that the universe is consecrated. Relativity was designed in modern physics to assert on the factual idea that light and speed in relationship to the applied equations work therefore are true. The consecrate, if the mass is zero where everything in the space field, planets, stars and galaxies all can only gain weight masses during momentum or in motion due to space curvature joined by some other heavier object or sphere. So, for that reason, what is any mass to equal zero in the vacancy of what is known as gravity, which can be defined to be or is the interaction between two energies in motion or at rest in a closed cyst, and like a planet's atmosphere. Why is this? A sphere's mass is measured by its energy. Moreover, to its center of mass that forms in its atmosphere its attraction.
Outside this closed system of ours and in open empty space works differently. It's a repulsive force, as was the fight of creation. Everything acting as a closed system, like the planets and stars, due to their center of mass that which their atmosphere is kept together, these chunks of mass are constantly being pushed out. The space field's expansion rate is what created this repulsiveness throughout its field, toppled as the fabric of space and relativity by Albert Einstein, but its surface which acts relative to its four-dimensionalities. As the space expands, the galaxies are being separated more and more by gravity and at a constant progressing velocity. Reviewing this explanation about supergravity space, you can observe how all the known forces do not work as relativity contends they do in the open system of empty space. Where on Earth a moving car slows down due to the gravity and its attraction on the highway in space, the repulsive space field does not cause attraction but acts as a pushing force. A car traveling 25 mph on an Earth highway in space will travel 50 meters.p.h. Instead, because of the absence of planetary gravity and absence of attraction, where in space there is none, you also will discover the lack of time dilation. The increase of gamma energy in a moving mass will not apply either. All these and more become obsolete in empty space. An increase in mass even at speeds slower than c light or faster than c is not affected maintained due to the universe's expansion velocity, which is constant, will maintain a vessel's speed and at a constant velocity and momentum.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?